Hey everybody, welcome back to another fun-filled episode of Record-ology with the squeaking and cheeping bird. Now, it is time for a good cup of coffee, guys, because I have a feeling that this show is going to be very entertaining and very interesting because of this. Why do I say that? Well, let me start with a little bit of a backstory. So, this is a record player, and the company that makes this record player had reached out to us on a couple other different products, and I saw this and I'm like, hey, this looks like a cool record player. We'd like to review it for you if you'd like to. And they said, sure. So they sent us this record player and it arrived the other day. So I really don't know much about it. I try not to dig in too deep on some stuff ahead of time because I really want to experience it in real time with you. However, once it arrived and I started carrying it in the house, I heard this. Oops. That last one was my fault. I did not plan to do that. Anyway, something's rattling around. It sounds like a platter. That may not be the end of the world, but I'm curious anyway what kind of condition this is in. Obviously, this is made in China, so I say that because it's a Chinese company. So I don't know what kind of a trip this had on the boat. We'll find out. We'll unpack it. We'll test it out. And if at the end of the day we have a good record player, I'll recommend it and give you a link in the bottom below. But you're definitely not going to want to miss this.
Is Record-ology.
Okay, and here it is. There's not much written on here. It just says model MJ202 turntable made in China, and it's got some measurements on there. Now, I really try, as a point of practice, not to do too much research on a lot of these turntables because I just want to experience it with you. So let's go ahead and get a knife and finish opening it here. It was partially open because I wasn't sure if there was any retail packaging on it, which I realize obviously there's not because this is mail order only. You're not going to find this on your local store shelf. Now, it looks like it's packed okay, but obviously something is rattling around in there that's not good. First weird thing I see is this kind of loose piece of cardboard. Not sure why that is. There's also these crumbs kind of spread out through the inside of the package, and that was the bag of accessories. We'll take a look at that in closer detail later. Now, this seems like it's packaged okay. I mean, it seems like it's packed in here really tight. I definitely feel and hear something rattling still, but I don't see any obvious reasons for it so far. It was packed in there pretty good. There's another piece of loose cardboard. Kind of bizarre, and like these crumbs of cardboard. It's kind of bizarre. But anyway, definitely something loose in there. Sounds kind of metallic, so I don't want to do that any more than I already have. Taking off the foam end blocks here. We're going to go ahead and set those aside. There's a good, kind of foam overwrap. We'll take that off gently as well. And it's got a dust cover on here, a nice looking smoked plastic dust cover with a cling wrap. That's all, normal, par for the course, what I'd expect. And a beautiful looking wood veneer on this plinth and cabinet. I think it looks great so far. So let's set some of these packing materials to the side. And here is the owner's manual. Definitely hold on to this. If we get stuck on operating any of these functions, we will need to refer to that. And it does do a couple of interesting things. It's got Bluetooth, it records to MP3 via built-in USB jack, all kinds of cool stuff like that. I'm going to go ahead and take the dust cover off so it's a little bit easier to see what we're doing, but it does have a hinged adjustment on the back. And it's as simple as that. And sure enough, guys, look at this. We got this loose metal rim. Kind of interesting, a metal rim that goes around a plastic platter. And that's a pretty typical looking plastic platter. We've seen that on the Electro Homes before. Usually it works pretty good. I've never seen one with this metal rim. I'm just going to go ahead and pop it on right here. I'm going to find out a little bit later that I didn't do that right. But for now, it feels like the right thing to do. Now, the overall thing is loose. The whole assembly is loose. Even though this transport screw is in the transport position, it should be a lot more rigid than this. You need to screw it down to actually disengage the transport so that it's more springy and can absorb some of those movements and shocks. Loose piece of plastic. It looks like it's the lift for the cartridge. That is a bummer. Definitely a victim of that metal ring knocking around in there. Okay, let's look at the unit here. It feels pretty heavy. There's an aux-in cable, there's an audio output, stereo left and right, and a power jack as well. Now those grills on the bottom are actually speaker grills because this does have 3 built-in speakers, and I'm going to give you a closer look at that right now. So you've got 2 small speakers and then 1 larger speaker in the middle. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a subwoofer, but it's definitely made for those lower frequencies. You know, they can do amazing things with speakers, so I'm curious how good it sounds. Okay, down here is our controls. Transport controls, you could play MP3s, you could record audio onto that thumb drive. One thing I really love is this big hefty metal volume knob. It's really cool. It's substantial. It's not a power switch, it's just a volume knob. I'm glad to see that. Okay, let's take a look at the cartridge. This is going to be a ceramic Chuo Denshi clone, and taking off the little stylus guard here. You really only need that on if you're transporting it. Here's a closer look at the stylus itself. It is a ruby tipped shank. So that's a tip of ruby, a tiny piece of ruby on a metal steel shank attached to a metal cantilever, which I'm glad to see, and a rubber pivot. Here are the accessories. We got the power supply. It is DC powered, the Aux-in cable, the extra stylus, and the cleaning cloth, which is awesome to see. I love that they have those accessories. Okay, unclipping the tone arm here. Here is the cueing lever so you can raise and lower it, the 3-speed selector switch. Also, here's a pro tip. If your record player skips, no matter what kind it is, if it has this little rubber lift back here, you can kind of push that down and out of the way, and that'll help with a lot of that skipping. It's got a funky looking little 45 RPM adapter. I've never seen this design, and the peg for it's down front on the left, which is kind of bizarre, but it gets the job done. And there's some tape sticking out. Dang it, I didn't get that on right. It's just a little foam double-sided tape to hold that metal rim, which is kind of cool. I guess it adds some inertia to the platter. Popping the circlip off. You guys know I always love looking under the hood. I like to see how things work and to see how good the wiring is. It is a belt-driven turntable, and that white plastic gear indicates the presence of an auto-return mechanism, which is really, really cool. You can see it at the bottom side here of this very plasticky platter with a metal rim on the outside. Kind of bizarre. I think it's probably a good idea. I've never seen anything like that before. Okay, let's take a closer look here. As you can tell, the plinth on this thing is like a thick inch solid piece of MDF, which is medium density fiberboard. It's basically, think of it like a bunch of sawdust that's glued together, and then like a very fancy sticker, which is that wood veneer on top of it. All of the various components that make a record player are here, including a few more. This is a very unique setup. There's the speaker enclosure right there in that plastic box. But these features are not rare in that there's a lot of record players with an auto return, but I've never seen a mechanism under here that looks just like this. There's a lot of little nuances and differences and variations from what I've seen in the past. So it's hard to say who's making this and how they have it working. But it should play records and it should sound good, right? We'll give it a chance. Now, when you first power it up, you can see it kind of going bananas here. That's not atypical. It happens from time to time. The record players with automatic functions need to kind of reset themselves and calibrate themselves to get those gears kind of moved into position so that it's ready to rock and roll. And as you can see, it's ready to go. Now, we're going to start with a 45 RPM record, and I am going to give it a little bit of a once-over lightly with my felt brush here just to get some of the dust out of the grooves there. And we're going to give it a sound test. This obviously has built-in speakers, so we're going to be doing the sound test ambiently. These are not direct feed sound tests, although for better sound, you can hook this up to a bigger stereo system. But you're going to be hearing the sound live in the room, and here it is.
4 o'clock rock, 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock rock, 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock rock, we're gonna rock around 10 o'clock tonight. Put this glad bright show, join me home, we'll have some fun when the first lights will rock around the clock tonight.
Okay, and we've got some more issues here. Obviously, that was way too fast at the beginning, and that was on 45. Getting out my little toolkit here, we're going to dig into this. In order to get it sounding better, I had to put it to 33, and it was still faster than 45. Now, this does look like it has some strobe markings right on the platter, but just to be safe, I'm going to be using my trusty, handy-dandy Hudson Hi-Fi platter mat strobe disc, which is very helpful. Now, let's give this a little bit of a closer look here. As you can see, we have the inner 3 rings here indicating 33, 45, and 78. We use the inner 3 rings because we are in the United States, and in the United States, we have 60 hertz power. So it's going to be dependent on whether or not you have 50 hertz or 60 hertz power. And we need to look under the hood once more to see if we can find any speed adjustments. By the way, there's the circlip. Fun to pop off, not so fun to put back on. That's intended to hold the platter in place in case you move it around and keep things from falling apart, which it didn't do because that rim was falling apart anyway. Okay, I'm going to put this back together with some protective foam because I'm flipping it on its back, and rather than make you watch a typical YouTube fast forward video of me opening this device and unscrewing a bunch of screws, I'm going to act like I'm unscrewing it, then I'm going to page peel to where the work has been all done ahead of time, and there we go. Interesting, you can see where they spray painted that veneer paint on there. Very interesting, right through the hole before they put the platter in. And there's the speaker enclosure and the wiring. It's actually pretty elegant wiring design. You got ribbon cables with plugs. Everything's routed. There is the motor. There's two different pots on there, two different adjustments, which will be the high and low setting, as well as this blue block here, and that is the pot for the 78 setting. So the high mark is 45, the low mark is 33, and then the blue block is 78. Now here is a similar motor. This is a JYK motor out of a typical 3-speed suitcase player type of record player, so you can kind of see what it looks like a little bit up close. And there are those pots there. There's a little piece of foam that you kind of have to stab your screwdriver through, flathead screwdriver, to get to the bottom. The one in this turntable is a little bit different. Now, I'm going to try something kind of bizarre here. These mechanisms can typically play sideways like this, so I am, rather than trying to make the adjustments from the bottom like I did before, kneeling down below it, I'm going to try and put it on its side and see if we can get it to work. But I've got to get this tone arm into position so that it triggers the actual movement of the platter first. And at this point, by the way, never do this. This is not smart, especially because I've got this thing plugged in while I've got the back panel off. I think it'd be smart to put on the little stylus guard, though, at least. So we're going to go ahead and move that down. It's not starting. Oh, yeah, it helps if I turn it on. It's amazing how that works. It really helps if you turn it on. I'm going to put the cueing lever lift up, and it starts going crazy again. And then I realize what's happening is it's auto-returning and then releasing, and then it lowers down, triggers the auto-return, and then goes back into position. So in my typical self, it takes me about 10 minutes to figure out what's happening. Before I deal with that problem, let's go ahead and put the strobe mat on and see if we can figure out a way to get this to work. And it just wants to keep auto-returning and dropping and auto-returning. So you know what? I'm going to take the audio cable and use it as a little rope here. I know, nothing but the finest here at Record-ology, you guys, but I'm going to hold it in position. Now look, as I adjust the 33 RPM speed, you can see the notches right here kind of slow down and then go fairly stationary. In the back of the unit, I'm adjusting the pots on that motor, and it's tough to get it. It's kind of inconsistent. The speed kind of slows down and then speeds up and slows down. So that's not ideal, but for the purposes of this type of record player, it'll work. I mean, it's not going to ruin your life. Now here I am adjusting the 45, which is the middle ring there, and you can see that slow down and pretty much lock into position. And then finally, we're going to go down to the 78 RPM speed, and I'm going to make the adjustment this time on that blue block, and you're going to see that inner strobe, or that inner ring, go into a stationary position. And if you can optically see that those markings are still, then you are good to go. So it's kind of fiddly. It takes me a while to kind of find that sweet spot, but I do finally find it, and we get it locked in. And we'll test out a 78 as well. Don't cringe, guys. It's okay to play 78s on these turntables. It's not going to damage anything. It'll do just fine. Now that we've got the speed dialed in perfectly, or pretty dang close to perfectly, we can take off my little jerry-rig solution here. I think it worked pretty well, you guys. I might have sacrificed an audio cable. It's not really good to tie knots in your audio cables. But one last look at the inner workings of this. I hope one last look, but you never know what's going to happen down the road. I'm going to go ahead and put the panel on now and put those screws back into position. And for your watching and viewing pleasure, I'm going to do that off camera. So we can go from this straight into this, and where everything is put back together. So we're going to start by playing an odd little record. This is a 10-inch, 33 RPM record, and we're just going to go ahead and give it a listen. And I'm pressing the power button here, and everything should be hunky-dory, and yes, it is. I do want to point out something that's kind of bizarre. I don't know if you can see it very easily from this position, but it's kind of odd. This thing is resetting again, by the way. But the cartridge alignment, the left to right cartridge alignment, looks pretty good right here at the outset of the record. I'm going to go ahead and dust it again, by the way. But when I rotate it towards the center of the record, you'll notice that the cartridge is at kind of a weird angle. It's not very ideal. But anyway, enough of that for now. Let's go ahead and give this a little bit more of a sound test.
The test of a good actor is not only his ability to play any role, but his willingness to accept any part, a part that might be unpopular with some members of the audience. In Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's newest release, The Americanization of Emily, successful Hollywood star James Garner puts his career on the block in such a role. We'll talk to Jim about his part in the picture as we welcome him to our mic. Jim, nice to see you.
Yeah, it's nice to see you.
Jim, why is the role you play in the Americanization of Emily considered controversial?
I play a coward in this one, but a coward with reason. Or I guess all cowards justify their position.
You know, for spoken word, I think it works pretty good. Let's listen to a little bit of music and see how it sounds. You know, it's adequate. It's not going to blow your mind, but it sounds okay. I mean, I was hoping for a little bit more fidelity out of those speakers, but, you know, they get the job done. They get the job done. All right, now I want to take a closer look right here. See how the cartridge is pretty much aligned right here, but when you move it towards the inside edge, it's kind of kilted like that. It's not like straight. It's like a cartridge alignment issue, and I think it has to do with this goofy S-shaped tone arm business. It's not quite a true S-shaped tone arm. Now, the auto return mechanism does trigger, but it goes right up to the edge of that paper label. That's a little bit sketchy, but it gets the job done. And I always love these auto return mechanisms. I think they're super, super cool. Okay, let's go ahead and listen to a little bit more music on this thing. I really want to test out these speakers some more. So let's give it a listen.
I lit cigarettes without a bill. Going out to dine, I met a girl who was divine. Soon we both were headed.
You know, they sound fine. I mean, they're okay. They're not going to, you know, really replace any major sound system. But if you just want to sit down and listen to a record, I think that they would work really, really well for that. You're definitely going to get better sound, you know, connected to an external sound system. All right, I'm going to go ahead and play a 78. No, this is not going to damage anything. It's not going to damage the record. It's not going to damage the stylus. But check it out. So this record is pretty worn down. It's a little dusty. And check out the back of this right behind the brush. See that? There's like this poof of dust. I've never seen anything like that. It literally was like this poof of dust that shot out from the back. Really interesting, you guys. Apparently I need to clean my records better. Okay, let's go ahead and listen to this 78 on this record player. It gets the job done. Obviously, a proper 78 stylus that's 3 mil will definitely ride those grooves better because this is a micro groove stylus on a wide 3 mil groove when you're playing a 78. Okay, next we're going to do a recording. We are going to record from a vinyl record onto that USB slot. We're going to put a thumb drive in there. Now, you're going to hear first a clip from the vinyl record directly, and then the actual file that was recorded itself. Here we go. Very, very interesting. So first of all, it's mono. It does not record in stereo. Second of all, it records a WAV file, which I thought was kind of cool, but it sounded all right, actually.
This right here, that lullaby. Go ahead, take that butt to sleep. Go ahead, take that diamond tap, put your pajamas on, and I hope you dream.
And that was a little Bluetooth sample for you as well. The speaker sounded good in that regard. Okay, now overall, I would say this unit definitely has some issues that we highlighted. However, I like the look of it. I like the idea of this layout and the functions that it has. I like the idea of speakers being hidden in the bottom of turntables. This one just needs a little bit more work to be a good unit. It's just a good day for coffee. I don't know why this is my second cup. And I hope you guys enjoyed that show as much as I enjoyed putting it together for you. It was just fun. I love doing all that kind of stuff. I want to let you know we've got some awesome stuff coming up in the coming weeks and months for Record-ology. I've got some awesome plans. We're going to have a really good time. You're more welcome than ever to sit down and join us. If you haven't done so already, go check out our huge backlog of videos. We've been making videos since early 2017, and we've got hundreds upon hundreds of videos on all different types of equipment, records, how things work, why things work, and we've just scratched the surface. We're just getting started. We're on an amazing journey, and you're invited to be along on that journey every step of the way. We're so glad to have you there. This is a two-way street. I want you guys to communicate with me as much as I'm communicating with you. So shoot me an email. In my video descriptions and in the About tab on the YouTube page, there's information about how to get a hold of me. You can send us stuff to the P.O. box, and we will review those if they're records or whatever. We put them on the show. We'll give you a shout out if you want it, all that good stuff. Definitely comment down below for each video. I go back and I read the comments. I read them every day, and I try to respond every day as well. Sometimes it's every other day I'm able to respond, but that goes for old videos as well. So if you're in an old video, don't be thinking that I'm not able to see those comments, because I'm able to see them as they come in a variety of ways. So if you comment on my first video, I'll still get notified that you sent me a message, so I'll be able to jump in there and respond to you. So every video is an active discussion between you and me going back and forth. As I said in my recent update video, we're gonna put the Happy Record hunting on hold for the time being and focus on Happy Record listening. So that's the focus for right now, guys. Happy Record listening. Stay tuned for another show coming up soon. Thank you so much for being there, guys. We'll see you next time.